Imagine writing your autobiography. You'd include your greatest achievements, career highlights, your family. Augustine, one of history's most influential thinkers, chose to spend pages analyzing stealing pears as a teenager. Not because he was hungry, not because the pears were good. He threw them to pigs. He stole them purely for the thrill of doing something wrong. Why would the man who shaped Western Christianity obsess over this? Because Augustine wasn't writing a resume, he was inventing something entirely new, the confession of an inner life. To understand why he cared so much about those pears, we need to understand the world he lived in and the intellectual journey he took. Ancient autobiography meant career summaries and military victories. Augustine gave us something unprecedented: anxieties, desires, doubts, raw self-revelation. The title Confessions carries two meanings. First, confession of sin, what we expect, but also confession of praise, acknowledging God's power. The book oscillates between both. Prayers and self-criticism intertwined on every page. Augustine lived in the late Roman Empire, a marketplace of beliefs. His own family was typical. His father, Patricius, was a traditional Roman pagan. His mother, Monica, was a devoted Christian. Different religions under one roof. This wasn't unusual. It was normal. Augustine moved through these options like someone sampling philosophies at a buffet. Raised with Christian influence from Monica, he embraced Manicheanism as a young man, a religion that explained the world as a cosmic battle between good and evil, spirit versus matter. Then he discovered Platonism, which offered a more sophisticated framework. Finally, he converted to Christianity in his 30s. Each step was a genuine intellectual choice. He wasn't drifting, he was searching. The late Roman world offered real options, and Augustine took them seriously. His spiritual autobiography maps this journey with remarkable honesty. But what exactly did these belief systems offer? Why did Augustine move from one to another? Manicheanism, founded by the prophet Mani, had a simple, powerful explanation for suffering. The universe is a battlefield, good versus evil, spirit versus matter. These forces are locked in eternal combat. Your body is a prison of evil matter, trapping your good spirit. This was intellectually attractive. It explained why bad things happen. It explained why you feel torn between desires. The cosmos itself is at war. But Augustine eventually found this a trap. Manicheanism made evil a cosmic force equal to good. It also meant your body, all physical matter, was inherently evil. Augustine couldn't accept this. Platonism rescued him. The Platonists offered a different framework. Matter isn't evil, just inferior. Evil isn't a force, it's a privation, an absence. Evil is simply preferring inferior things over superior ones, a turning away, a misperception. This was revolutionary. Instead of two cosmic armies, you have a hierarchy of goods. Some things are better than others. Evil happens when you choose lower goods over higher ones. Here's where we need to correct a common misconception. Platonic love doesn't mean rejecting physical love. It means recognizing that physical love refers to something higher. Picture a hierarchy. At the top, the eternal, the spiritual, what Platonists called the one. Below that, intellectual goods like wisdom and truth. Lower still, physical pleasures and material wealth. Nothing on this hierarchy is evil. Wealth isn't bad. Physical pleasure isn't bad. The error comes from stopping there, from preferring lower goods when higher ones are available. Evil is a misdirected gaze, not a cosmic enemy. Augustine admired the Platonists. He credited them with freeing him from Manicheanism's cosmic dualism. Their framework was elegant, sophisticated, intellectually satisfying, but he found it insufficient. The Platonic explanation says evil comes from ignorance. Right? People choose inferior goods because they don't know better. The solution? Education. teach people to recognize higher goods, and they'll naturally pursue them. Show someone that wisdom surpasses wealth, and they'll choose wisdom. Right? It sounds reasonable. It sounds optimistic. And Augustine thought it was wrong. Right? Now we can return to those pears. Augustine was 16. He and his friends broke into a neighbor's orchard at night. They shook down enormous quantities of pears. They didn't eat them. The pears weren't even good. They threw them to pigs. Augustine asked himself why. He wasn't hungry. He didn't want the fruit. He gained nothing. The only pleasure was in the transgression itself, the thrill of doing what was forbidden. This is what haunted him for decades. This is why he wrote pages about stolen pears, because this moment broke the Platonic explanation. If evil comes from ignorance, education should fix it. But Augustine knew stealing was wrong. He knew the pears were worthless. He had no confusion about higher and lower goods. He stole them because they were forbidden. The wrongness was the point. This insight that humans can want what's bad for them, that sin has its own perverse pleasure, shapes Western psychology, literature, and theology to this day. We don't just make mistakes, we sometimes choose evil precisely because it's evil. The will can desire transgression for its own sake. Platonism couldn't explain this. Christianity, Augustine believed, could. The concept of original sin, a will bent toward transgression from birth, made sense of what he experienced. Grace, not just education, was needed to straighten it. Whether or not you accept Augustine's theological conclusions, his psychological insight endures. We recognize ourselves in that pear theft, the diet we break knowing we'll regret it, the cruel word we speak knowing it's cruel, the self-sabotage we can't quite explain. Augustine didn't invent sin. Right? He invented a way of writing about the self that takes these contradictions seriously. The Confessions invites us to examine our own inner lives with the same honesty. What do we do that we know we shouldn't? Not from ignorance, but from some darker attraction. Augustine wrote his Confessions around 397 AD. 16 centuries later, we still read them. Not because we share his theology, not because we care about 5th century North Africa. We read them because Augustine asked questions we still can't answer. Why do we want what harms us? Why does the forbidden attract? Why isn't knowing better the same as doing better? A teenager stole pears he didn't want and threw them to pigs. And in trying to understand why, he invented a new way of being human on the page.